Millennials are America's future, and often its favorite punchline. People say we're young, but the oldest millennials are nearing 40. People say we're dumb, but we're the most educated generation ever. And people say we're spoiled, but we're the first generation in American history who will be worse off financially than our parents. We're traveling across the country to find out how young Americans are surviving, and in some cases thriving. I'm Brad Hunt, and this is American Paycheck. Detroit, once emblematic of the American dream. Propelled by the big three auto manufacturers, in 1960, the Motor City was the wealthiest metropolis in the country.
If you think of the history of Detroit, it used to be the hype city, the city that had, the best economy, the most jobs, automotive capital of the world. And then we did have our issues over, a few decades there.
But as gas prices rose, foreign cars which needed less fuel made their way onto American streets, causing the big three to collapse, taking Detroit down with it.
We're a city that was built on the big three. When they left, we crumbled. It's the American narrative that we have to really wrestle with, especially in post-industrial cities.
Entire neighborhoods were abandoned, and this once proud place was written off as a doomed wasteland. In 2015, Detroit became the largest American city to ever file for bankruptcy. From the rust and rubble, enterprising business people are rebuilding Detroit into a hotbed for entrepreneurship.
And you fast forward to 2019, you have a ton of startups that have not just raised a ton of money, but have been able to use that money to build very successful businesses.
Even like in downtown Detroit now, you're seeing a lot of millennials starting on small businesses. Everyone talks about how Detroit's starting to come back, and I think that's a big part of it.
Amy Cahurl is at the forefront of this movement. Her nonprofit, Pony Ride, is a creative workspace that offers below-market rent to budding entrepreneurs.
Pony Ride, it can fit in the social entrepreneurship category. We get entrepreneurs into a space, start collaborating, working together. So if you notice, we're standing in between 4 different businesses right now. Another group that partners with a nonprofit called Alternatives for Girls, and they are a sewing project, and they teach women and girls how to sew. There's a group called the Empowerment Plan, and it makes coats that turn into sleeping bags and hire homeless folks to create the coats and transition them out of homelessness. Almost every business in here has a social mission of making the world a little bit different than how they found it. But I don't think good should be the enemy of capitalism.
We are currently in our manufacturing space in Core City, Detroit. Elair Apothecary is an organic and vegan skincare company. We started this in 2015 when our youngest brother was looking for a vegan alternative to a deodorant, and you have a background in chemistry, so I helped him create one. I came up here to work for automotive. I was an industrial hygienist at GM, but at the end of the day, I've always just kind of known that I was going to be an entrepreneur.
I honestly never saw myself retiring from a company and spending 30, 40 years there and just saying okay, this is what I'm going to do every single day, just because that's not how we were brought up. Our parents were first generation Nigerians that were heavily into entrepreneurship.
Our dad owns pharmacies in Ohio. So we grew up in an entrepreneur family. Started the company August 2015. We started with no capital. We started with our paychecks, and to this day, we don't have any outside investment. It's been completely self-funded, which has been a blessing in disguise that we've been able to do that the past 4 years. But I live very differently. I went from having a 2-bedroom, 2-bath place right on the river to I live in a studio. You just got to cut your costs.
It was even for me, I lived frugal. We're sharing that studio until I leave and go on the sourcing trip that I'm going to in Nigeria. One of the major goals is we want to expand into our own physical location. We're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
And even when we do retail, bringing other brand partners along with us, we found that collaboration is so much better than doing it ourselves.
The Akune sisters' story mirrors Detroit's, moving on from auto into entrepreneurship. They aren't an isolated case. The DeMai brothers are another sibling duo, working to revive the city.
And seeing what Google Fiber was doing out in Kansas City, how cool would something like this be if we were able to do this in Detroit? We want to go build this brand new fiber infrastructure in Detroit and then layer different services on top of that. What we want to do, how we want to do it, the value it could bring to Detroit.
A fiber optic cable is being laid underground that will turn Detroit into a cutting-edge technological hub.
The cool thing with Detroit is that the expenses to running a business are lower than like the Silicon Valley or New York. We're one of the cities that has the most engineers. Over time, that's what we've seen. A ton of companies, I mean, all the way up to the Microsofts and LinkedIn's that want to move here because it has one of the best tech infrastructures in the world, if not the best. Over the last 10 years, we've seen this huge focus by people wanting to really help the city get back on its feet, both from a government perspective to nonprofit to for-profit. All are zoned in, with one goal. But not only that, built in a way that people see opportunity here.
Our goal was always to live the American dream, even like in Kosovo.
We were born in Kosovo, which is a country out in Eastern Europe. Lived there until I was 14, and that shit was 10, all the way until like 97, 98, when things started getting worse, and then we lived through that war there. It consists of running around, seeing people get killed and shot, but there's nothing cool about going through a war. There's nothing cool about having to live that kind of life, right? You happen to do it, and then you're unfortunate, but you're lucky to make it out alive, and that changes perspective. And things that are risky to somebody don't seem as risky, I think, to people that have gone through things like that.
I think it's had a massive impact on us as entrepreneurs. I think going through the struggles that you go through, you also find opportunities, right? If you look at it as refugees, you are at risk. As entrepreneurs, you have a ton of opportunity if you're doing the right due diligence.
I think the most I've learned from being in Detroit is sometimes all we need is right here, right in front of us.
I think that really, as citizens, we have to start coming together and really making the change, be building everything up.
Will innovators and entrepreneurs be able to revive this once great city? Only time will tell. But for now, all that matters is tomorrow's paycheck.